Well, haven't done this in a while. Hello, if you don't know me, I'm Ephraim Josine. I've been posting on Medium recently, and that's where I'm sure a lot of you guys found me. Others of you may have actually looked up my name because I've had a presence on YouTube before. And some people might be asking, well, why aren't you just using the channel you used to use? And the answer is, I had a decent shift in my political views since then that no longer. I really don't want to use that channel because it contains all the videos where I say things I no longer agree with. And I mean a lot of things. And as such, it would just feel inappropriate. Like, there'd be 1,000 videos of me being a social democrat and then these new videos of me being an anarcho-capitalist. So some are asking why I became an anarcho-capitalist. And there are actually a few very simple reasons. Now, as mentioned, I was a social democrat for a good 7 or so years. I even hosted a podcast at one point that was literally, I just called My Socially Democratic Perspective. And I was a huge Bernie guy. I'm even looking at my book selection right now, and I got a lot of Tom Hartman. I got some Noam Chomsky, which I actually am kind of fine with. Noam Chomsky is still cool. He's bad on economics, but he's right on basically everything else. I got a lot of Jim Hightower. I even got some Robert Reich. That's how bad I was at this. And of course, I own some of the Bernie Sanders books. I have Our Revolution and Bernie Sanders' Guide to a Political Revolution on my shelves, and Bill Clinton's Back to Work and all sorts of things. So, what made me just sort of over the course of a couple of days, really, become an anarcho capitalist? Well, a few reasons. First, I should know it's not that I discovered this new ideology and suddenly started believing in it. I had discovered anarcho capitalism around 2017 or so. And what happened is, it actually, funny enough, kind of started with the Bernie movement, where that was the first guy. Because in American politics, a lot of it is really sort of, we have to do a government and free market. And Bernie was like, well, why can't on some issues we just be all government? And that was a new idea I had never heard. So I started thinking, are there more ideas I hadn't heard of? Because I had been very mainstream political Democrat for several years at that point. Um, and as such, I didn't really even think there were newer ideas other than just the ones that the Democratic Party were proposing. So I started looking into new ideas, and one of the ideas I came across around 2017 was anarcho-capitalism. And I watched their videos, and I thought they were kind of dumb, to be honest. And a lot of them kind of were, still looking back. No offense to a lot of people who made those videos. They were still, some of them are really good, and I was just grasping at straws trying to argue with them. However, there were a lot that weren't very good. It doesn't help that one of my real first exposures to this ideology was esoteric entity. Nothing against the guy. I love him. I'm his. I think we're friends. In fact, I don't know. Confirm that with him. I kid. But at that point, he was somebody else. He was a guy named Midnight Phantom. And I hail from a community called the commentary community. And ask them about Midnight Phantom sometime, and yeah. Esso has since disowned basically everything he did as Midnight Phantom, and as such, I would not hold a grudge on him for it, considering I was one of the people who actually saw him act like that. But when that's your first exposure, it could be kind of hard to overcome. Now, luckily, since then, Esoteric Entity has made some really good videos. In fact, I declare him probably one of my favorite anarcho-capitalist YouTubers. However, his early stuff, which you can no longer find, for the record, except in a few mirrors here and there, was not very good. So, how did I accept this ideology? How did I find people who I liked in it? Well, that's a little bit of a longer story. You probably remember that Questions for Status video. Well, I actually looked through a few of the people who were there, most famously Mr. Dapperton, and then later I found Shane Killian, who's probably my favorite anarcho-capitalist YouTuber of all time. Uh, because he's just, you gain IQ points watching him, I swear, as Dapperton said. And of course, this was back when Dapperton was Anarchy Ball. And not that Facebook page, that's another story. So basically, I started watching these videos by Dapperton, and especially by Killian. And, I'd go, oh, well, when they're picking on communists, that's fine, because I was never a communist. Well, Actually, there were a couple of weeks where I considered myself a communist, or here and there I've considered myself, but I'd probably never actually agree with an ideological communist. I've even considered myself an anarcho-communist a couple of times. But again, I'd probably disagree with basically everything any well-known anarcho-communist says. So I don't really think I'm a good comparison for that ideology. But anyway, it'd be, oh, when they're picking on communists, that's fine. And yeah, this social democrat I like got a few things wrong here and there. But still, the overall ideology is right. And the thing that I think made Shane specifically the reason I became a supporter of this ideology wasn't because of things like the non aggression principle, which he did explain greatly for the record, but it was his atheism and libertarianism series, because I had been an atheist since I was actually a really young kid. I was never raised particularly religious, and as such, when I first heard the concept of a Christian God, I was like 6, and I just thought, that's dumb, I'm gonna go play Sesame Street games. And it wasn't until like a year later I realized people actually believed in that, and I just couldn't believe it. And as such, his series, and to be fair, there are again some theistic anarchists that I do like. You know, Filthy Heretic is Catholic, so is Tom Woods, and he's one of the most popular narco-capitalists. And I think Postal Cat is Mormon, though I could be wrong on that. I think he's a Mormon. I could check, but I don't want to. But anyway, his atheism and libertarianism series basically showed me that, well, God isn't real. Any arguments made for a God are just easy to debunk, and they're the exact same arguments made for a state. And once I jumped that hurdle, I was just realized, yeah, there's basically no reason to not be an anarcho-capitalist. I think there were about 5 minutes where I was a minarchist. But that went away really quickly when I just thought, wait a minute, didn't we try minarchy before and it didn't really work? I think it was a combination with that and my complete disagreement towards the concept of war. Because if you look at the past 50 years, there's never really been a war that was just. There was the Vietnam War in the 60s was really the first big one that we considered to be unjust. And since then, the only real major war has been the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which were obviously unjust. And it was my realization that the military-industrial complex can only exist because of a state that caused me to realize, well, if I don't want a military-industrial complex, there shouldn't be a government. To quote my friend Ancapistan Kitty, peace is only possible in the absence of aggression. I think that phrase sums up why we need this ideology more than ever right now. Because the United States is currently bombing 8 different countries, none of them propose a direct threat to anything. And the mainstream media is just completely ignoring it at this point. And really, I'm trying to think of how best to put this. The ideology of freedom is not why I'm an anarcho-capitalist. There are a lot of people who look at libertarianism or anarcho-capitalism and say it's just an anti-government position. And I hate that. And I absolutely also hate minarchists and a lot of Libertarian Party candidates because they promote that. Johnson did that a lot, where it was a small government ideology. And Austin Peterson rejected the non-aggression principle. What anarcho-capitalism and libertarianism really are at their core are anti-aggression ideologies. That's it. And I feel like a lot of people who consider themselves to be libertarians don't even realize that. A lot of them just think it's about small government, when that's really a side effect. If you do not believe in aggression, you're going to be against the government no matter what. You know? I also think this is somewhat the fault of libertarians for not really promoting themselves as anti aggression and just promoting themselves as anti government. But that's a debate for another time. And I'd like to stress that it's more the mainstream libertarians who are the only ones the mainstream media let on that are doing this, and not the vast majority of anarcho capitalists I know. This is not helped by the fact that the Republican Party has claimed to be libertarian for several decades and has never been. So that's how I became an anarcho capitalist. And if you like my opinions and want to read them as well, there's a link below to my Medium where I regularly also write my opinions out. In fact, if you don't like my voice, you can just read my voice and make up your own voice. Imagine I sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Actually, that'd be weird. Don't do that. And if you really like this content, then donate to me. And below is the address for my Atomic wallet. It's a very good way to tell cryptocurrency. It has like every cryptocurrency you could want. And if you want to give a specific cryptocurrency to me, then just ask me in the comments and I'll gladly tell you. Anyway, I am Ephraim, and keep making the case for liberty.